Chapter 1, The Weight of Silence. The plastic chair bit into Kira's back like teeth. Click buzz, the overhead fluorescent tube flickered epileptic warnings against his eyes, each flash a countdown to something he could not speak. Could not stop. The linoleum under his boots used to be white, maybe decades ago, now a topography of stains and scuff marks that looked like dried blood in the poor light. 37 pills. The number wrote itself between his eyelids each time he blinked. Blue ones, white ones, the tiny yellow capsules that clicked like dice in the bottle. His gut twisted, not from the drugs, those had done their work and been passed hours earlier, but from the memory of taking them one at a time, intentionally, like a recited prayer in reverse. His brother's voice echoing inside the echo chamber of his skull, "You're weak, Kira. Always were. Even the steps couldn't make a man of you." The curses followed him across an ocean, through immigration lines, into dorms and classrooms, deposited as sediment in his chest until breathing was archaeology, each breath exhaling another layer of shame. Home. The name had the taste of copper pennies. Mongolia had been a fever dream now, all that vast sky coaxed into this small box of buzzing lights and antiseptic emptiness. He'd been 7 when Batbear had first hit him, 9 when hitting had become ritual, 15 when he'd come to understand that his brother's fists were just another form of weather, inevitable, destructive, seasonal. The waiting room stank of industrial cleaner and human fear. Across from him, a woman rocked a screaming baby whose screams seemed to harmonize with the fluorescent drone. A gray-haired man in the corner grumbled to himself in Spanish, rosary beads clicking between his knuckles like snapped bones. I must be feeling something, Kira told himself, watching a cockroach cross the minefield of paper cups and tissues beside the vending machine. Fear, relief, regret, something. There was only the hollow circle of his pulse, its ticks eating away the seconds in a language he no longer knew how to speak. The sliding doors groaned open, spilling another casualty of the night. Chapter 2, Philosophical Hemorrhaging. Yuri staggered through the doors of the hospital like a fireman running out of flames, his hand pressed against his chest where his heart hammered out Morse code warning calls. His other hand held Sartre's Being and Nothingness textbook, as heavy as a gravestone. The absurd, he thought, the bloody absurd. The irony was not lost on him, experiencing a panic attack reading about existential fear. His thesis advisor would have denounced it as performative philosophy. His therapist would have doubled his Xanax dosage. The receptionist blinked up with the sleepy face of someone who'd fixed too many broken humans for minimum wage. Insurance card? Yuri dug into his wallet, his fingers quivering like parched leaves. Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I? The words echoed through his mind in a loop of terror. He'd simply been strolling through campus, walking along, and reality had careened off its axis and the crushing weight of existence had come down on him like a falling building. What's the point? The query had tracked him for months, haunting lecture halls and shelves of books, leaping out during 3 a.m. coffee breaks and early morning bike rides. What's the point of anything when we're all just cosmic accidents stumbling towards death? Sir? Your card? He handed over the plastic square that attested to his belonging to the medical industrial complex. In the background, the automatic doors were swinging open and shut with mechanical breathing sounds, letting in the wounded and the lost. The waiting room lay out before him like beige-colored purgatory. His eyes found a slumped figure in one of the plastic chairs, Asian features, black hair, the gaunt-eyed look of someone who'd stared into the void too long. The man's stillness made Yuri's chest constrict even more. We're all dying, he told himself, from the time we're born, we're dying, and nobody says anything, everybody does this big act like there's this big purpose, some meaning, but there isn't, is there? Just chemistry and biology and the simulation of consciousness, just. The pain in his chest grew. Stars exploded behind his eyes. Help, he whispered, and the word slipped out of him as a prayer to a God in whom he did not believe. Chapter 3, Collision Course. Dr. Sofo had seen enough suicide attempts to recognize the particular kind of emptiness that flooded the waiting room with carbon monoxide-like invisibility, deadliness, and strangulation. 23 years of emergency psychiatric work had carved lines into his face that were as deep as rain gullies. He watched the two young men through the observation window. The Asian kid, Kira, according to his chart, sat rigid as stone, gaze locked on some 0.6 inches in front of his toes. Typical presentation: botched overdose, foreign student, family history of trauma. The drugs had been Tylenol PM and ibuprofen, a combination more suited to suffering than to efficacy. And the other one, Yuri, paced like a cornered beast, philosophy book clutched against his heart like armor. Panic disorder with existential ideation, the intake records read. 22 years old and already drowning in the weight of his own mind. Two flavors of despair, Sopho mused, but the same pathology beneath: disconnection. From family, from meaning, from hope. He'd planned to do it separately, the protocol for suicidal ideation. Individual therapy, med switches, the usual revolving door of the mental health system. But there was something in the way they sat in the waiting room, orbiting each other without interaction, that made him pause. He watched Yuri jolt violently in his chair, one hand clawing at his chest. The book dropped from his fingers, pages scattering like broken wings across the linoleum. "Nurse!" The shout cracked through the waiting room like a whip. Kira's head jerked up, the first motion he'd made in hours. For a moment, their eyes met across the antiseptic room, two drowning men seeing the water in each other's lungs. Chapter 4: The Art of Falling Apart. The nurse, Janet, her badge red, though she moved more like a ghost that haunted scrubs, glided over with the smooth urgency of one who'd sorted human pain into tidy categories. Code gray, code blue, code I don't have time for this shit. Easy, honey, she murmured to Yuri as she guided him to a chair next to Kira. Just breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Like you're blowing out birthday candles. Birthday candles. Yuri's mind clung to the image, wishes made over flames, hope literally going up in smoke. 20 birthdays left? 40? 60 more years of this hollowness? I can't, he panted, I can't get past. Past what, baby? Death. Meaninglessness. The universe's heat death. That consciousness is probably just an evolutionary fluke and love is merely chemicals and art is merely humans screaming in the void and everything, he gasped. Beside him, Kira shifted. It was a tiny movement, just a redistribution of weight, but Yuri's attention caught it. Up close, he could see the other man's hands trembling slightly, fingers interlocked in what might have been prayer or restraint. How many? Kira asked, his voice carrying an accent like wind whistling over open spaces. What? Pills. How many did you take? Yuri blinked. I didn't, I'm not. Neither did I, Kira lied, and the lie hung between them like smoke. 37. And you? The honesty was brutal, naked in its simplicity. Yuri found himself answering, none. I wanted to, but I couldn't get past the statistics. Tylenol overdose has a 70% survival rate but causes liver failure. A stupid way to fail at dying. Kira's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, more like the memory of humor and muscles. I made bad calculations too. Woke up 6 hours later with a headache and a hospital bill. They sat in companionable misery, two failed suicides, while the fluorescent lights droned mechanical mantras overhead. Chapter 5: Group Therapy for Disasters. Dr. Sopho entered the consultation room with two thick manila folders stuffed with the paperwork of broken minds. His eyes fell on his patients, he already thought of them as such, though he couldn't quite explain why, sitting side by side in the waiting room. Kira Batbear. Yuri Chin. The two men looked up with the expression of students called to the principal's office. You're both being admitted to our outpatient program. 6 weeks, daily sessions, group therapy. He paused, studying their faces. Together. What? Kira's voice cracked like ice under pressure. I don't need, Yuri started. You don't get to decide, Sopho cut him off, his tone carrying the authority of one who'd pulled too many people back from the edge to tolerate refusal. This isn't a negotiation. It's a prescription. Group therapy. The words tasted like medicine, bitter, necessary, somehow shameful. I don't want to spill my shit to strangers, Kira muttered, but there was no real fight in his voice. Good, Sofo replied. Because he's not a stranger anymore. He's your partner in not dying. The words hung there like a gauntlet thrown. Chapter 6, The Weight of Words. Day 3 of what they'd started calling Suicide Club, Yuri's joke, no one laughed. The hospital group therapy room had apparently been designed by someone who'd never experienced despair. Beige walls and motivational posters with sunsets and soaring eagles and inspirational quotes that made real pain feel mocked. Tell me about your brother, Dr. Sofo said, pen poised over his notepad. Kira's jaw clenched. Outside in the parking lot, he could see normal people going about their normal lives with their normal problems. In his mind, the steps stretched endlessly, and Batbear's voice carried across the grass, weak. Always weak. He used to, the words caught in his throat like bones. When I was a kid, he would. Show, don't tell, he thought desperately, remembering some line from a freshman English class. But how do you describe the sound of a fist against a 7-year-old's ribs? How do you describe the taste of blood when your brother's knuckles rearrange your teeth? He beat me, Kira finally said, the words simple and heavy as stones. For 10 years. Daily. Sometimes twice a day. Yuri's hands clenched in his lap. He thought of his own family, absent father, anxious mother, the suffocating weight of expectations wrapped around his throat like a well-intentioned noose. My parents want me to be happy, Yuri blurted. That's the worst part. They love me so much it hurts. They think depression is just sadness you can therapy away, anxiety is just stress you can meditate through. They've never lain awake at 4 a.m. wondering why consciousness evolved if all it does is make us aware of our own meaninglessness. Kira looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Your brother never beat you. No. But you still want to kill yourself. Yeah. They sat with that, the tragedy and absurdity of it suspended between them like dust motes. Sometimes I miss the steps, Kira whispered. Back home. All that space, all that sky. You could walk for days and never see another human soul. The freedom of it, you know? But the loneliness too. Same loneliness as here, but at least there it made sense. Yuri nodded slowly. I think about space too. Not Mongolia, but cosmic space. All those light years of nothing between stars. We're just atoms that learn to worry, floating through an explosion in the middle of nowhere. It should be terrifying, but sometimes it's almost peaceful. Like maybe the futility is the point. Dr. Sofo sat quietly, watching them talk, his pen idle. There was something happening here, some recognition that wasn't available in textbooks. Chapter 7, Small Disasters, Shared. Week 2. The hospital cafeteria at 2 p.m. served coffee that tasted like regret burned on the burner and sandwiches that had given up the will to live. Kira stirred 3 packets of sugar into his cup, then 4, then 5, while Yuri poked at a turkey sandwich with the texture of cardboard soaked in disappointment. I called my mother yesterday, Kira announced. Yuri set down his sandwich. Yeah? Told her about the pills. Kira's spoon clinked against ceramic, a small, metallic sound like wind chimes. She cried. For an hour. In Mongolian. I'd forgotten how ugly crying sounds in your native language. Ugly crying. Yuri filed the phrase away. What did she say? That she should have stopped Batbear. That she knew but didn't know how to. Kira's voice cracked. She said she was proud of me for surviving. Surviving. As if it were an accomplishment, a skill, something to put on a resume. 2018 to present. Successfully maintained life functions despite persistent desire to discontinue. My parents have no idea, Yuri admitted. About any of it. They think I'm taking a philosophy course. Practical ethics, I told them. They approved. Practical. He imagined the phone call. Hi mom, hi dad, guess what? Your son is in group therapy because he can't wrap his head around the idea that being alive is enough. No, don't cry, I'm seeing a therapist. It's very practical. Do you miss it? Yuri asked. Home? Kira considered this. Home. The word was complicated, weighted with so much history. Home was his mother's fingers in his hair when he was 5. Home was also Batbear's fists when he was 15. Home was the smell of mutton stew and the sound of wind through grass and the shame that had traveled with him across an ocean. I miss who I was, Kira finally said. Before I learned to flinch. Before I came here looking for something I couldn't name. Before you discovered distance doesn't cure loneliness. Yeah. They sat in comfortable misery, two broken people sharing the strange intimacy of the broken. The cafeteria around them buzzed with the ordinary drama of the untraumatized, nurses planning weekends, doctors arguing about sports, visitors navigating the awkward choreography of bedside visits. Normal people, Yuri thought. Do they know how strange they are? How miraculous? They wake up and don't immediately start calculating the odds of surviving another day. I had a dog, Kira said suddenly. Back home. Before America. Black and white, like a panda. I named him Temujin. After Genghis Khan? Yeah. Stupid name for a dog who was afraid of his own shadow. Kira smiled, the first genuine smile Yuri had seen from him. He used to sleep on my feet in winter. When when things got bad, Temujin would find me afterwards. Never tried to protect me during, but always came afterwards. Just sat there, warm and stupid and loyal. Yuri pictured it, a boy bleeding in the snow, comforted by a coward dog with an emperor's name. The image was heartbreaking and somehow beautiful. I never had pets, Yuri said. My parents thought they were impractical. Like most things I wanted. He stopped stirring his coffee, finally giving up on improvement. I used to feed stray cats behind my dorm. Bought them this expensive organic food, told myself it was research into altruism and moral responsibility. Really, I just liked having something to take care of. What happened to them? Winter came. They disappeared. Probably died. He shrugged, but his shoulders carried the weight of small failures, accumulated guilt. I kept buying the food for a month afterwards. Just in case. Kira understood. Hope was the cruelest emotion, it made you complicit in your own disappointment. Chapter 8, The Physics of Falling. Week 4 brought rain drumming against the hospital windows like liquid bullets. The group therapy room felt smaller, cozier, as if the weather had wrapped itself around their shared despair. I've been thinking, Yuri said, about gravity. Dr. Sofo looked up from his notepad. This was how breakthroughs often began, with seemingly random thoughts that contained hidden truths. Gravity? Yeah. It's not really a force, you know? Einstein showed us that. It's just the warping of spacetime. Mass bends reality, and we experience the bend as falling. Yuri's hands moved as he spoke, tracing invisible equations in the air. Depression is like that. Like someone put a black hole in my chest, and everything, thoughts, feelings, hope, just gets pulled in and crushed. Kira listened, intrigued despite himself. He'd never heard pain described in terms of physics. But here's the thing, Yuri continued, his words gathering momentum. Black holes aren't empty. They're incredibly dense objects. All that mass concentrated into a single point. What if depression isn't the absence of feeling? What if it's too much feeling compressed into something so dense it becomes invisible? Too much feeling. The words resonated in Kira's chest like a struck bell. He thought of the weight he carried, not just Batbear's cruelty, but the accumulated mass of every moment he hadn't been loved, hadn't been wanted, had been fundamentally wrong. All of it compressed into a density that had its own gravity, pulling everything good past an event horizon. So what's the escape velocity? Dr. Sofo asked gently. Yuri blinked. What? If depression is a black hole, what's the escape velocity? How fast do you have to go to break free? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Yuri's mouth opened, closed, opened again. For once, he didn't have an answer. Maybe, Kira said slowly, you don't escape alone. Maybe you need, what do you call it? A binary system? Yuri stared at him. Binary systems in astronomy, two massive objects in gravitational dance, each affecting the other's trajectory. Neither could exist in isolation. Two black holes, Kira continued, orbiting each other. The math is different. Instead of falling in, you orbit? Orbit. The word suggested possibility, movement, a kind of balance born from mutual attraction rather than isolation. Dr. Sofo set down his pen and smiled. Chapter 9, The Art of Not Disappearing. Week 5. Something had shifted between them, subtle as a change in barometric pressure, but unmistakable to anyone paying attention. They no longer sat in the waiting room staring at their phones or the floor. They talked. I wrote a letter to my brother, Kira said, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. Didn't send it. But I wrote it. Yuri looked at the letter, white paper covered with careful handwriting that had obviously cost something to produce. What did it say? That I forgive him. Kira's voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. Not for his sake. For mine. Because carrying all that rage was killing me slower than the pills. Forgiveness as suicide prevention. Yuri filed the concept away with all the other things he was learning about the mechanics of healing. I've been writing too, Yuri admitted. Not letters. Just thoughts. Stream of consciousness stuff. 3 pages every morning, no editing, no censoring. Just dumping the contents of my head onto paper. What kind of thoughts? Yuri grinned sheepishly. Weird ones. Yesterday I wrote 500 words about the existential significance of breakfast cereal. Whether choosing Cheerios over Frosted Flakes is an existential statement about one's relationship to mortality and delayed gratification. Kira laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising them both. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I know, right? But also, kind of profound? Like maybe the small choices matter more than we think. Maybe meaning isn't this huge cosmic thing we have to discover. Maybe it's just Cheerios. One spoonful at a time. They sat for a moment, contemplating the metaphysics of breakfast. I want to go home, Kira said suddenly. Not to Mongolia. I mean, I want to figure out what home is. Whether it's a place you're from or a feeling you have or just this. Sitting in a shitty hospital cafeteria with someone who gets it. Yuri nodded. I've been thinking about that too. Home. I used to think home was where everything made sense. But maybe home is just wherever you can be broken without having to pretend you're fixed. Broken without pretending. The phrase captured something essential about their friendship, the luxury of not performing wellness, of not having to convince anyone they were fine when they obviously weren't. Dr. Sofo says we graduate next week, Kira said. Graduate. Like we earned degrees in not killing ourselves. Bachelor of Arts in staying alive. Masters in applied existence. They grinned at each other, and for a moment the weight lifted. Not gone, would never be gone, but manageable. Shared. Chapter 10, Gravitational Pull. Final session. Dr. Sofo sat across from them in the group therapy room they'd grown accustomed to, the backdrop of their journey from chaos to something resembling stability. So, he said, closing the thick files that documented their passage from despair to hope. What now? The question they'd both been avoiding. In the controlled environment of the hospital, they had structure, purpose, a reason to exist beyond mere existence. Out there, In the world of regular people with regular problems, what would hold them together? I got accepted, Yuri said quietly. Columbia. Philosophy PhD program. They liked my personal statement about existential phenomenology and lived experience. Cold began to pool in Kira's stomach. That's great. New York, right? Close to here. Close. Yeah. But there was uncertainty in Yuri's voice, as if proximity might not be enough to sustain what they'd built here. I'm staying at the community college, Kira told him. For now, anyway. Pre-med, maybe. Sounds crazy, wanting to heal people when I couldn't even fix myself, but... He shrugged. Maybe that's exactly the point. Dr. Sofo watched them navigate the delicate mathematics of friendship after crisis. You know, he said carefully, recovery isn't a destination. It's not a place you arrive and you're done. It's more like maintenance. Daily, sometimes boring as hell. Like taking vitamins, Yuri said. Like flossing your teeth, Kira added. Exactly. Daily maintenance that keeps the rot from setting in. Sofo leaned forward. The question is, what's your maintenance plan? They looked at each other across the small space between their chairs. 6 weeks ago, they'd been strangers united only by their shared desire to stop existing. Now they were something. Friends felt too small. Brothers felt too heavy. Something else, something unnamed but necessary. Coffee, Yuri said. Wednesday mornings. That diner on Route 9 with the waitress who looks perpetually disappointed. Mel's, Kira nodded. The one with pie that tastes like a childhood trauma. We meet there. Every week. No exceptions. Even when we don't want to. Especially when we don't want to. It wasn't much of a plan, two damaged people drinking mediocre coffee in the awkward intimacy of shared pain. But it was something. A gravitational force that might keep them orbiting possibility instead of spiraling helplessly inward. Dr. Sofo smiled and made a note in his file, prognosis, cautiously optimistic.